Hi guys. Um, it's article time again, or video time again, or both better said. So yeah, let's dive right in. You can find this article that I'm about to read linked in the description, as is customarily the case, and or the end screen, and so on and so forth, yada yada. So yeah, let's go. What it's like being dead in detail. The average person, especially more often than not, wonders what the afterlife is like. But very few people, I think, including practitioners of the occult, think about the details in depth. Bear in mind that what I'm about to say is the case in general, but there are always exceptions. That can be compared to taking one's clothes off. There is nothing to be afraid of, and it's the natural order of things. No differently than when one is born into the material plane or simply comes into being. You shed yourself of your material body, and your connection to the material world is permanently severed. The importance of one's mental health and state of mind, as is the case overall, so this is no exception, cannot be stated enough. This determines largely what astral plane you'll end up in. If you're at peace with yourself when upon dying, and at least, generally speaking, mentally healthy, then you'll end up in a higher place. In an average state of mind, you can expect similar to your mental state of being. It's like an upgraded version of the material world. There are societies and places similar to countries slash regions slash neighborhoods, and it just goes on, but better. You'll be able to do numerous things that in the material world you couldn't do, that you could not do or cannot do, such as be in a different location much quicker and faster. You can fly slash suspend yourself in the air, and it just goes on like that. Things such as language barriers and related are virtually non-existent because you're pure energy. You're no longer held back by having a material body and all the burdens that accompany it. Magicians and the likes that can astral travel effectively can make a very similar comparison because when you do so, you can pretty much do all of the aforementioned, or at least most of them. I've done it myself, so it's not an issue. Like lifetimes ago when I was a beginner, and the benefits just go on. It's not literally the same as being dead, but you get a feel for what it's like. Needless to say, your environment is quite similar. Things such as pollution, littering, and all the negative aspects of the material plane are not there. The basic things you saw when you were alive are there, such as streets, buildings, and whatnot. They're there, but they're simply much, much better. They're much more elaborate, cleaner, and free from imperfections compared to the material plane. Again, I've experienced this myself as well. So there you go. That's what the astral plane looks like, more or less. I saved the worst for last. When you die and you're in a horrible state of mind, or your mental health is bad, let alone worse, the astral plane that you'll end up in will be similar to your state of mind. So expect to be in an abysmal place that is akin to the worst neighborhoods you were familiar with in the material world, but even worse, arguably. Pain, misery, negativity, confusion, despair, feeling lost, and so on is the norm in such a place of existence. So yeah, that was my article. Again, as always, I recommend you check it out. Also, past videos I've done to anything similar to this subject. So what it's like to be dead and stuff like that. Anything relating to that, you can find it embedded, including this video, as is the case by default in said article. So this video is an extension of the article. Again, by default, that's the case by default. And yeah, let me see. What else can I say? My article is obviously self-explanatory. I've experienced this myself as well, like I said earlier. I've experienced this, like I said, myself as well. For example, when astral traveling, that's pretty much what it's like being dead, but of course, much more intense because astral traveling is like permanent. And when you astral project and or travel, um, part of you is still in your physical body. But when you're dead, like the cord literally gets severed up. So yeah. And for those of you that don't know what I'm referring to with the cord, you remember like in pop media when you see like, for example, in cartoons that when someone like dies, they're physically. I already brought this up a long time ago in the past. They're um, they're like attached to their physical body and astral body are attached to a cord. That does indeed exist. Okay, it's not like nonsense or bluntly put bullshit or nothing. No, that's simply again that's the bond, the tie that connects your astral body to your physical body. When that cord permanently gets severed, then yeah, you're dead. Um, Yeah, anyways, but you get a feel when astral projecting what it's like. You can do all the things like I said. So yeah, you can see how pleasant it sounds. It is just as pleasant, honestly. But the importance of being mentally healthy and in a good place, because you could die at any given moment. All of us can. Father wills it and book. Just done. So, um, it's important because if you're in like a bad place and mentally, or you have regrets in any way, shape, and or form, all of that stuff is going to hold you back. This principle applies across existence as a whole. Okay, the same way that people that are in a bad state of mind. Have you ever seen these people be successful in general or anything like that? Like genuinely successful? No. The most successful people by default, and it has nothing to do with material possessions so much or anything like that. People that genuinely speaking are doing well, they're content with their lives and existences, are in a good state of mind. You're seeing these people, generally speaking, they're in a good state of mind. When you look at these people and you analyze them in depth or in detail, they don't walk around with mental baggage as in, oh, I'm miserable, oh, I'm this, I'm that. No, there is no little to no mental baggage. So yeah, the same principle that applies to the material world also applies to any other world, but much more so because, like I said, if you are in a horrible state of mind, you're going to end up in a horrible place. And yourself, the only way to undo yourself from something like that is to is by relieving yourself from said baggage, and that is not something that happens easily. Not to mention the fact that you need to be intellectually inclined to be able to thingy this to do so. That's why, for example, people that are dead, some of them spend decades, extreme cases, I want to say centuries even, in that horrible state of mind, and they naturally are stuck in limbo, as we like to call it, or as we like to colloquially refer to it, loosely refer to it. They're stuck in some low-level astral plane because they still have baggage. For example, there were still so many things they wanted to do that they were dead when they were dead and whatnot. Again, the same way that in the material world, people can only get over something if they don't have the mental or intellectual capacity to reach that conclusion by themselves or on their own, by going to either a shrink, a really good shrink, like a psychiatrist, psychologist, or going to someone similar, someone that can actually mentally help them, someone that can explain to them. In that same context, someone that died like that would actually need to be told, and the message needs to sink in and or get through that, hey, none of us decide when we go, okay? It's decided for you. When it's your time to go. End of story. So it doesn't matter how many things you wanted to do with your life. You simply need to accept the fact that, hey, this is not something I can control. It's unfortunate because I had a bunch of things I wanted to do with my life, but I need to let go of all of that. I simply need to let go of all of that because I need to understand that I can't control when I die like so many other things. So I just need to cut my losses and move on. That the person needs to literally spiritually fully realize that, and then the person will relieve themselves of that baggage, that negativity that held them back, and then they'll automatically advance to they'll level up, if you will, to a higher plane of existence, a higher astral plane. But yeah, you can see for yourself the same way that you've got people globally. I've seen people walk around with baggage, some of them their entire lives. Right. In that same context, when you're dead, you've got people, for example, that go through decades or like 50 years, 100 years by material world metrics before they can pass on. Um, a good deal of people, for example, that commit suicide are a perfect example. Suicide in itself is a sin, obviously, which I've already brought up in the past, but not to the point where it's like, oh, you're gonna burn in hell or anything like that. No, no, no. Don't even think like that. That's not what it has to do with. Usually, people that, for example, commit suicide, it doesn't matter how they died in that context, within this given context. It has to do with the horrible state of mind they're in. Needless to say, obviously, a good deal of people that commit suicide are not in the best state of mind. So that negative state of mind is holding them back. So they end up in an astral plane. The second they're dead, more or less, they end up in an astral plane, um, akin to their state of mind, like I said. So you can imagine, usually these people are extremely unhappy, so you can expect to end up in an extremely unpleasant astral plane, similar to some kind of back alley ghetto filled with vermin and where negativity is the norm. It's as hellish as it sounds. Um, Hypothetical exceptions are that, generally speaking, you don't immediately go. It's not literally like fuck. It depends, but generally speaking, everything I said is the case. But in some cases, for example, you don't immediately, like, obviously go to an astral plane. You're in the astral plane closest to the material plane, um, relatively speaking, and then you'll simply go through the motions as in, hey, wait a minute, I'm dead. Wow. Okay. And the reason for that is because regarding your state of mind or state of end or state of being, you still need to come to terms with the fact that you're no longer part of the material plane. And when you realize that, then you'll automatically like hightail it out of there. No differently than if you physically go to a location, you go to the park, you're like, yeah, I'm at the park. You just weren't aware of the fact that you were at the park. You were just wandering about or something. You just wanted to get some fresh air, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, I'm in the park. I've already been here. Okay. You linger there for 5 minutes and then you just leave. Like that. Okay. And that's why for a good deal of people, for example, husband and wife, significant other, they know each other. So this is amongst a lot of people globally. This is something that they know, but more through word of mouth or through through knowledge that's been passed on throughout the generations that, hey, for example, when your wife dies, like a guy, your wife isn't immediately going to leave. So you're going to see, don't be surprised if you like get a dream about her or you see her briefly or anything like that. And it just goes on. So, yeah, for example, if I were married, I had a wife, I know that, hey, in general, my wife, when she dies, boom, she's dead. She dies before me. She's not immediately just going to leave. She's like going to linger around and whatnot, maybe for a week or two, and then she's gonna be like, she needs to fully come to terms with the fact that she's dead. That doesn't mean that she's suffering, she's in a bad place. She's not. But it's simply like a temporary lapse, to put it that way. And then she'll move on, you know. Usually, um, there is leeway or spacing to say goodbye to loved ones and stuff like that, and whatnot. That's why people, for example, get dreams. You get a dream about your grandma, as in grandma simply was there to say goodbye to you. You had a dream that grandma told you goodbye. I'll see you in the future. Blah 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 blah. It just goes on. This kind of stuff is normal. Again, it's in general existentially compared to the material plane, being dead is quite privileged in the sense that existentially you're like, it's like having a regular status and then VIP status because the dead in general, other than all the other benefits I mentioned, they also have access to multiple planes of existence, including the material plane, obviously. So that's why when you're dead in general, you can easily come back to the material plane, but not literally. You can come back to the plane closest to the material plane, the astral plane, and then you can do whatever you wanted to do, go about your business and whatnot. Exceptionally skilled dead people can even influence the material world, such as like push over a pencil and stuff like that, move things here and there, you name it. These are relatively speaking exceptions, but still, it's comparable to for example, being a tenant of an apartment building compared to the landlord. The landlord has access to pretty much every floor in the apartment building, and it just goes on like that. That's simply loosely put how you can compare it, and so on. That's all. Bye.